old school project for Mr. Goldman's English class, I plan on experiencing old-time radio. For example, the origin of radio, interviewing people from that era, discussing radio, the slow phasing out of radio, modern day radio versus old-time radio, and finally, how radio evolved into popular TV shows. Serbian-American scientist Nikola Tesla and Italian physicist Guglielmo Marconi went head-to-head in what would become the race to invent the radio. Nikola Tesla invented the Teslacle, a device essential to sending and receiving radio waves. In 1904, it was declared that Marconi invented the radio, but in 1915, Tesla sued the Marconi company for patent infringement to no avail. Then Tesla was declared the inventor of the radio. This is my interview portion of my old school project. First, I'm interviewing Mr. Irvin Waxman, and afterwards I will be interviewing Mr. Bernie Kesselman. What are your memories of old-time radio?
Yhonatan, my memories of radio, old-time radio, to me it was radio, was the one place I was able to have relief from my school. I used to go to school at 8:30 in the morning, and we had Hebrew in the morning. We had Limud Kodesh till 3 o'clock, then we had a half-hour break, and then we had secular schools till 7. So when I got home, all I wanted to do is eat and listen to my favorite programs.
Okay. What is a familiar event where everyone was it a family event where everyone gathered around the radio?
Well, we had a number of family events. Of course, we had the Etta Cantor show, we had the Milton Berle show, we had Gracie Allen show. But the most time when the family got together was when the President of the United States was speaking, President Roosevelt, and he had what they called a fireside chat with the family. We all listened, and I didn't understand too much because I was, in 1932 I was going to school, but I was still a kid, and I didn't really understand the significance until many years later. But my parents, I looked at my parents' faces, and they told us a lot of information just by looking at their faces.
Okay. What were some of your favorite shows and why?
Most of my favorite shows were either the detective shows or the entertainment shows, like I just told you, Milton Berle, Eddie Cantor. There were songs, and there were dancing. There was a lot of jokes. And of course, the detective shows were, the intrigue of the detectives. Who did the killing? And there was one famous show that I had that was called The Shadow. And it was The Shadow Lurks. That's how the show started. That was my favorites.
Since today's times, radio is not so popular, but people still listen to it. More because they don't have access to a TV or computer at that time. What do you feel people who aren't familiar with old-time radio is missing the most?
Well, many times I go to an old age home where you have a couple of groupings over there, and they don't have TV because some of them can't see because they're blind, and some of them can't hear. So what they do is they sit together and they listen to the radio, and it brings back some memories to me of when I was a kid, but thank God my parents and I were healthy, so we didn't have the same comparison. But you could see that these people enjoy whatever they hear on the radio, whether it's news or whether it's entertainment and songs, especially if you go to a Jewish home and they listen to the Jewish radio, they like it very much.
Thank you. What are your memories of old-time radio?
when I was a kid, we used to have in our house in the Bronx where I grew up a huge radio sitting in the living room. Went with two doors, and you opened up these doors, and you had a big radio screen in front of you with knobs and whatnot. And I was like towards the end of old-time radio, the beginning of TV. But my best recollection of it was that my brother and I used to listen to a couple of shows on the radio, which he liked. And I had an older brother who passed away, much older brother, and he had fought in the 1948 war. He flew to Israel and fought in the war and came back, and he was at that radio every morning listening to news about Israel.
Was it a family event where everyone gathered around the radio?
No, not really. It was just me and my brother and my really older brother. My brother and I had four. One of four brothers. Two of them are much older. One much older from my father's former marriage, and they passed away. But my full brother and I used to listen to radio often, and as I said, my older brother used to listen to the Israeli news, the news about Israel every morning.
Okay. What were some of your favorite shows and why?
I only remember two shows when we were kids. One was Only the Shadow Knows. It was a scary show about the shadow, who used to do good actually, but it was a little scary. I must have been, I don't know, 5 years old at the time, or 6 years old, and I still remember that, it was like a little laugh after the shadow spoke. Only the shadow knows. It was a little scary, but my brother, who was a year and a half older than me, he loved this show, and we listened to it often. The second show was a science fiction show. It was also a little scary for me. It was X-1, I think the name of the show was, and it would start off X-10, X-9, X-8, until we came to X-1, and then it was a scary kind of sound. And then they would tell stories about scary science fiction happenings. I don't remember any of the stories, but I remember it was a little scary for me.
Since today's time, radio is not so popular, but people still listen to it, more because they don't have access to a TV or computer at that time. What do you feel people who aren't familiar with old-time radio is missing the most?
I don't think they're missing too much because they have so much now to see and so much to look at with video and the internet and everything else. And the old-time radio, I assume used to draw people together around the radio, but I didn't have that situation. But I do know when I called my brother to see what he remembered, and the one in it, he's my brother in Israel, and he goes on the internet and goes back to some of the old-time shows to listen to them again. So he remembers that with fondness.
Here are some radio shows which evolved into popular TV shows: The Lone Ranger, The Jack and Benny Program, Adventures of Superman, The Goldbergs, Hopalong Cassidy, and The Green Hornet. Thank you, Mr. Goldman, for assigning this project. I enjoyed very much working on it and researching and all the things I did.